The 1981 Irish hunger strike was the culmination of a 5-year protest during the Troubles by Irish Republican prisoners in Northern Ireland. The protest began as the blanket protest in 1976, when the British government withdrew special category status for convicted paramilitary prisoners. In 1978, after a number of attacks on prisoners leaving their cells to slop out, the dispute escalated into the dirty protest, where prisoners refused to leave their cells to wash and covered the walls of their cells with excrement. In 1980, 7 prisoners participated in the first hunger strike, which ended after 53 days. The second hunger strike took place in 1981 and was a showdown between the prisoners and the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. One hunger striker, Bobby Sands, was elected as a Member of Parliament during the strike, prompting media interest from around the world. The strike was called off after 10 prisoners had starved themselves to death, including Sands, whose funeral was attended by 100,000 people. The strike radicalised Irish nationalist politics, and was the driving force that enabled Sinn Féin copyrighting to become a mainstream political party. Background: there had been hunger strikes by Irish Republican prisoners since 1917, and 12 men had previously died on hunger strikes, including Thomas Ashe, Terence MacSwiney, C.N. McAuliffe, Michael Gorn and Frank Stagg. After the introduction of internment in 1971, Lancashire later known as HM Prison Mazier was run like a prisoner of war camp. Internees lived in dormitories and disciplined themselves with military-style command structures, drilled with dummy guns made from wood, and held lectures on guerrilla warfare and politics. Convicted prisoners were refused the same rights as internees until July 1972, when special category status was introduced following a hunger strike by 40 Provisional Irish Republican Army prisoners led by the veteran Republican Billy McKee. Special category, or political, status meant prisoners were treated similarly to prisoners of war. For example, not having to wear prison uniforms or do prison work. In 1976, as part of the policy of criminalisation, the British government brought an end to special category status for paramilitary prisoners in Northern Ireland. The policy was not introduced for existing prisoners, but for those convicted of offences after March 1, 1976. The end to special category status was a serious threat to the authority which the paramilitary leaderships inside prison had been able to exercise over their own men, as well as being a propaganda blow. Blanket and dirty protests. On September 14, 1976, newly convicted prisoner Kieran Nugent began the blanket protest, in which IRA and Irish National Liberation Army prisoners refused to wear prison uniform and either went naked or fashioned garments from prison blankets. In 1978, after a number of attacks on prisoners leaving their cells to slop out, this escalated into the dirty protest, where prisoners refused to wash and smeared the walls of their cells with excrement. These protests aimed to re-establish their political status by securing what were known as the 5 demands: the right not to wear a prison uniform, the right not to do prison work, the right of free association with other prisoners, and to organize educational and recreational pursuits, the right to 1 visit, 1 letter and 1 parcel per week. Full restoration of remission lost through the protest. Initially, this protest did not attract a great deal of attention, and even the IRA regarded it as a side issue compared to their armed campaign. It began to attract attention when Thomas Fiach, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Armagh, visited the prison and condemned the conditions there. In 1979, former MP Bernadette McAliskey stood in the election for the European Parliament on a platform of support for the protesting prisoners, and won 5.9% of the vote across Northern Ireland, even though Sinn Féin copyrighting had called for a boycott of this election. Shortly after this, the broad-based National H Bloc Armagh Committee was formed, on a platform of support for the 5 demands, with McAliskey as its main spokesperson. The period leading up to the hunger strike saw assassinations by both Republicans and Loyalists. The IRA shot and killed a number of prison officers, while Loyalist paramilitaries shot and killed a number of activists in the National H Bloc Armagh Committee and badly injured McAliskey and her husband in an attempt on their lives. First hunger strike, On October 27, 1980, Republican prisoners in HM Prison Maze began a hunger strike. Many prisoners volunteered to be part of the strike, but a total of 7 were selected to match the number of men who signed the Easter 1916 Proclamation of the Republic. The group consisted of IRA members Brendan Hughes, Tommy McKinney, Raymond McCartney, Tom McFeely, Sean McKenna, Leo Green, and INLA member John Nixon. On December 1, 3 prisoners in Armagh Women's Prison joined the strike, including Myra copyright Ad Farrell, followed by a short-lived hunger strike by several dozen more prisoners in HM Prison Maze. In a war of nerves between the IRA leadership and the British government, with McKenna lapsing in and out of a coma and on the brink of death, the government appeared to concede the essence of the prisoners' 5 demands with a 30-page document detailing a proposed settlement. With the document in transit to Belfast, Hughes took the decision to save McKenna's life and end the strike after 53 days on December 18. Second hunger strike. In January 1981 it became clear that the prisoners' demands had not been conceded. Prison authorities began to supply the prisoners with officially issued civilian clothing, whereas the prisoners demanded the right to wear their own clothing. On February 4 the prisoners issued a statement saying that the British government had failed to resolve the crisis and declared their intention of hunger striking once more. The second hunger strike began on March 1, when Bobby Sands, the IRA's former commanding officer in the prison, refused food. Unlike the first strike, the prisoners joined one at a time and at staggered intervals, which they believed would arouse maximum public support and exert maximum pressure on Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The Republican movement initially struggled to generate public support for the second hunger strike. The Sunday before Sands began his strike, 3,500 people marched through West Belfast. During the first hunger strike 4 months earlier the marchers had numbered 10,000. 5 days into the strike, however, independent Republican MP for Fermanagh and South Tyrone Frank Maguire died, resulting in a by-election. There was debate among nationalists and Republicans regarding who should contest the election. Austin Currie of the Social Democratic and Labour Party expressed an interest, as did Bernadette McAliskey and Maguire's brother Noel. After negotiations, and implied threats to Noel Maguire, they agreed not to split the nationalist vote by contesting the election, and Sands stood as an anti-H Bloc candidate against Ulster Unionist Party candidate Harry West. Following a high-profile campaign the election took place on April 9, and Sands was elected to the British House of Commons with 30,492 votes to West's 29,046. Sands' election victory raised hopes that a settlement could be negotiated, but Thatcher stood firm in refusing to give concessions to the hunger strikers. She stated, "We are not prepared to consider special category status for certain groups of people serving sentences for crime. Crime is crime is crime, it is not political." The world's media descended on Belfast, and several intermediaries visited Sands in an attempt to negotiate an end to the hunger strike, including Zala de Valera, granddaughter of a Permilomone de Valera, Pope John Paul II's personal envoy John McGee, and European Commission of Human Rights officials. With Sands close to death, the government's position remained unchanged, with Secretary of State for Northern Ireland Humphrey Atkins stating if Mr. Sands persisted in his wish to commit suicide, that was his choice. The government would not force medical treatment upon him. Deaths and end of strike equals. On May 5, Sands died in the prison hospital on the 66th day of his hunger strike, prompting rioting in nationalist areas of Northern Ireland. Humphrey Atkins issued a statement saying that Sands had committed suicide under the instructions of those who felt it useful to their cause that he should die. Over 100,000 people lined the route of his funeral, which was conducted with full IRA military honours. Margaret Thatcher showed no sympathy for his death, telling the House of Commons that Mr. Sands was a convicted criminal. He chose to take his own life. It was a choice that his organisation did not allow to many of its victims. In the 2 weeks following Sands' death, 3 more hunger strikers died. Francis Hughes died on May 12, resulting in further rioting in nationalist areas of Northern Ireland, in particular Derry and Belfast. Following the deaths of Raymond McCreish and Patsy O'Hara on May 21, Toma Esafiak, by then Primate of all Ireland, criticised the British government's handling of the hunger strike. Despite this, Thatcher still refused to negotiate a settlement, stating faced with the failure of their discredited cause, the men of violence have chosen in recent months to play what may well be their last card, during a visit to Belfast in late May. 9 protesting prisoners contested the general election in the Republic of Ireland in June. Kieran Doherty and Paddy Agnew were elected in Cavan Monaghan and Louth respectively, and Joe McDonnell narrowly missed election in Sligo Leitrim. There were also local elections in Northern Ireland around that time, and although Sinn Féin copyright and did not contest them, some smaller groups and independents who supported the hunger strikers won seats. For example, the Irish Independence Party won 21 seats, while the Irish Republican Socialist Party and People's Democracy won 2 seats each, and a number of pro-hunger strike independent candidates also won seats. The British government rushed through the Representation of the People Act 1981 to prevent another prisoner contesting the second by-election in Fermanagh and South Tyrone, which was due to take place following the death of Sands. Following the deaths of Joe McDonnell and Martin Herson, the families of some of the hunger strikers attended a meeting on July 28 with Catholic priest Father Dennis Fall. The families expressed concern at the lack of a settlement to the priest, and a decision was made to meet with Gerry Adams later that day. At the meeting, Father Fall put pressure on Adams to find a way of ending the strike, and Adams agreed to ask the IRA leadership to order the men to end the hunger strike. The following day, Adams held a meeting with 6 of the hunger strikers to outline a proposed settlement on offer from the British government should the strike be brought to an end. The strikers rejected the settlement, believing that accepting anything less than the 5 demands would be a betrayal of the sacrifice made by Bobby Sands and the other men who had died. On July 31 the hunger strike began to break, when the mother of Paddy Quinn insisted on medical intervention to save his life. The following day Kevin Lynch died, followed by Kieran Doherty on August 2, Thomas Maselli on August 8 and Michael Devine on August 20. On the day Devine died, Sam's election agent Owen Carron won the Fermanagh and South Tyrone by-election with an increased number of votes. On September 6 the family of Lawrence McKeown became the 4th family to intervene and asked for medical treatment to save his life, and Cahal Daily issued a statement calling on Republican prisoners to end the hunger strike. A week later James Pryor replaced Humphrey Atkins as Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and met with prisoners in an attempt to end the strike. Liam McCloskey ended his strike on September 26 after his family said they would ask for medical intervention if he became unconscious, and it became clear that the families of the remaining hunger strikers would also intervene to save their lives. The strike was called off at 3:15 p.m. on October 3, and 3 days later Pryor announced partial concessions to the prisoners, including the right to wear their own clothes at all times. The only one of the 5 demands still outstanding was the right not to do prison work. Following sabotage by the prisoners and the Maze prison escape in 1983, the prison workshops were closed, effectively granting all of the 5 demands, but without any formal recognition of political status from the government. Participants who died on hunger strike over the summer of 1981, 10 hunger strikers had died. Their names, paramilitary affiliation, dates of death, and length of hunger strike are as follows. The original pathologist's report recorded the hunger strikers' cause of death as self-imposed starvation. This was later amended to simply starvation, after protests from the dead strikers' families. The coroner recorded verdicts of starvation, self-imposed. Other participants in the hunger strike although 10 men died during the course of the hunger strike, 13 others began refusing food but were taken off hunger strike either due to medical reasons or after intervention by their families. Many of them still suffer from the effects of the strike, with problems including digestive, visual, physical and neurological disabilities. Consequences. The British press hailed the hunger strike as a triumph for Thatcher, with the Guardian newspaper stating the government had overcome the hunger strikes by a show of resolute determination not to be bullied. However, the hunger strike was a Pyrrhic victory for Thatcher and the British government. Thatcher became a Republican hate figure of Cromwellian proportions, with Danny Morrison describing her as the biggest bastard we have ever known. At the time most thought the hunger strike a crashing defeat for the Republicans, a view shared by many within the IRA and Sinn Féin copyright in, but Sann's by-election win was a propaganda victory. As with internment in 1971 and Bloody Sunday in 1972, IRA recruitment was boosted, resulting in a new surge of paramilitary activity. There was an upsurge of violence after the comparatively quiet years of the late 1970s, with widespread civil disorder in Northern Ireland and rioting outside the British Embassy in Dublin. Security forces fired 29,695 plastic bullets in 1981, causing 7 deaths, compared to a total of around 16,000 bullets and 4 deaths in the 8 years following the hunger strikes. The IRA continued its armed campaign during the 7 months of the strike, killing 13 policemen, 13 soldiers, including 5 members of the Ulster Defence Regiment and 5 civilians. The 7 months saw a total of 61 people killed, 34 of them civilians. 3 years later the IRA perpetrated the Brighton Hotel bombing, an attack on the Conservative Party conference that killed 5 people and in which Thatcher herself only narrowly escaped death. The hunger strike prompted Sinn Féin copyright in to move towards electoral politics. Sann's election victory, combined with that of pro-hunger strike candidates in the Northern Ireland local elections and Dáil elections in the Republic of Ireland, gave birth to the Armalite and ballot box strategy. Gerry Adams remarked that Sann's victory exposed the lie that the hunger strike a Euro, and by extension the IRA and the whole Republican movement a Euro had no popular support. The election victories of Doherty and Agnew also had political impact in the Republic of Ireland, as they denied power to Charles Haughey's outgoing Fianna Fáil government. In 1982 Sinn Féin copyright in won 5 seats in the elections to the Northern Ireland Assembly, and in 1983 Gerry Adams won a seat in the UK general election. As a result of the political base built during the hunger strike, Sinn Féin copyright continued to grow in the following 2 decades. After the United Kingdom general election, 2001, it became the largest nationalist party in Northern Ireland, and after the 2014 local and European elections held on both sides of the border, asserted it was now the largest party in Ireland. In 2005, the role of Gerry Adams was questioned by former prisoner Richard O'Rourke, who was the public relations officer inside the prison during the strike. O'Rourke states in his book Blanketman that Adams prolonged the strike as it was of great political benefit to Sinn Féin copyright in and allowed Owen Carron to win Sann's seat. This claim is denied by several hunger strikers and Brendan McFarlane, who was OC inside the prison during the hunger strike. McFarlane claims O'Rourke's version of events is confused and fragmentary, and states we were desperate for a solution. Any deal that went some way to meeting the 5 demands would have been taken. If it was confirmed in writing, we'd have grabbed it. There was never a deal, there was never a take it or leave it option at all. Commemorations. There are memorials and murals in memory of the hunger strikers in towns and cities across Ireland, including Belfast, Dublin, Derry, Crossmaglen and Camlough. Annual commemorations take place across Ireland for each man who died on the hunger strike, and an annual hunger strike commemoration march is held in Belfast each year, which includes a Bobby Sands memorial lecture. Several towns and cities in France have named streets after Bobby Sands, including Paris and Le Mans. The Iranian government also named a street running alongside the British Embassy in Tehran after Bobby Sands, which was formerly called Winston Churchill Street. A memorial to the men who died in the Irish Rebellion of 1798, the Easter Rising and the hunger strike stands in Waverley Cemetery, Sydney, Australia, which is also the burial place of Michael Dwyer of the Society of United Irishmen. In 1997 Lorraine's Hartford unit in the United States dedicated a monument to Bobby Sands and the other hunger strikers. The monument stands in a traffic circle known as Bobby Sands Circle, at the bottom of Maple Avenue near Goodwin Park. On March 20, 2001 Sinn Féin Copyright-In's national chairperson Mitchell McLaughlin opened the National Hunger Strike Commemoration Committee's exhibition at the Europa Hotel in Belfast, which included 3 original works of art from Belfast-based artists. A separate exhibition was also launched in Derry the following month. 3 films have been made based on the events of the hunger strike, Some Mother's Son starring Helen Mirren, H3, and Steve McQueen's Hunger. References. External links: Bobby Sands Trust, Irish Hunger Strike Commemorative Project, Hunger Strikers Memorial, Hartford, Connecticut, USA, Chicago Hunger Strike Commemoration Committee.